Pivot tables are easy to get started with, but you can spend plenty of time mastering some of the more advanced features. In this screencast, I'll show you 5 techniques you may not know about. The first of these is slicers. With my pivot table already selected, I'll go to Analyze, Insert Slicer. I'll check the boxes for the fields that I want to insert slicers for and press OK. Now I've got these slicer windows inserted into my spreadsheet. These are point and click ways of filtering what's inside of the pivot table. As I click on one of these options, my pivot table is reduced to the selection. Clicking on one of these fields really narrows down what's inside of the pivot table. I can hold Control on my keyboard and add to the selection and select multiple items inside of the slicer. Imagine using slicers as a way to send out a report to various audiences and letting them filter the data for what they care about, like a product type or region they manage. Next up, let's add a timeline, which is a special type of slicer that works with date data. With the pivot table selected, I'll go right back to Analyze, and this time click on Insert Timeline. Let's click Date and press OK. Now, this timeline is a way of modifying the dates of the data that you're including as part of your pivot table. I can click and drag to select a specific set of data with a limited set of dates. I could also click on the drop-down option in the upper right to change how I select data, such as filtering based on the quarter or year, for example. Next up, let's check out Tabular View, which is a way of changing the way your pivot table appears. I often use Tabular View because it works more like a standard spreadsheet. Right now, I have a pivot table already built that is in the standard view. With it selected, I'll come up to the Design tab and choose Report Layout, Show in Tabular Form. Now, instead of the standard pivot table view where rows kind of cascade down the side, this is more like a true spreadsheet style view. We can still pivot our data by changing the fields and how they're shown, but it's easier to work with like this. This is my preferred way of working with pivot tables because I can more easily use formulas on this data or copy and paste it into a separate sheet. A calculated field will let you use math on your existing columns to create new fields to work with. It doesn't change your original data, but you can use calculations on your data and create new fields. For this example, I'll go to the Analyze tab with the pivot table selected and choose Fields, Items, and Sets. Then I'll choose Calculated Field. This menu is really helpful. I'm going to create a field called Price with Tax. I'll add a 5% sales tax in this case. The menu below shows the fields in my pivot table. I'll double-click on Total Price. It adds to the formula bar. Now I'll click in the formula itself and write the multiplication sign, the asterisk, and then type 1.05 to multiply times the tax rate. I'll press OK, and now we have the field in our table and we can work with it like any other. You can use calculated fields to use math operators like addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Use calculated fields on multiple other columns or with numbers you manually type on your own. Recommended pivot tables are an extremely easy to use feature, but a great way to dive deeper into your data. Excel can actually suggest pivot table alignments for exploring your data. With the columns of my data highlighted, I'm going to go to the Insert tab and then choose Recommended Pivot Table on the left side. We have a long selection of choices for recommended pivot table configurations, and I can choose from them by clicking on the thumbnails shown here on the left side. When I find one that I like, I'll go ahead and press OK. Once you insert a recommended pivot table, there's no reason you can't keep tweaking the fields after you insert it. Use these as a starting point and keep tweaking. These 5 techniques can help you get the most out of one of Excel's most powerful features. I'm Andrew Childress for Envato Tuts Plus, and thanks as always for joining.